the next 10 years are going to be radically different to the last 10 years. AI-based technologies, real-time data delivery are going to be key cornerstones to our programming landscape. We're working on a lot of tailored solutions that leverage the likes of machine learning, large language models, and natural language processing to really optimize our use cases and our processes.
Welcome to another episode of the Verisian Community Podcast. My name is Thomas, and today I'm joined by Daniel. Daniel is a director of Statistical Programming at Parexel, and he's calling all the way from Bloemfontein. I love Daniel's optimism. Daniel refers to the current time of clinical programming as the golden age, and I think that's a beautiful way of putting it because there's so many opportunities out there, especially if you're a junior programmer, but even if you're a more veteran, seasoned programmer. I think there's some great advices that Daniel gives. If you want to continue the conversation, Daniel is more than happy for you to reach out to him on LinkedIn. So have a follow, listen to this, and hopefully there's some good nuggets in there for you as well. I also, before we start the podcast, I also just wanted to let you guys know we have our first community in-person event happening on the 4th of May in Hyderabad. Now, the event is absolutely sold out. We have over 300 registrants coming to our event. We're super excited for it. We've got 4 speakers. We've got a panel session going on. I'm going to be there myself. I'm going to fly all the way from London to Hyderabad. If you can't make it, we have more events scheduled, or at least in the pipeline, coming up, both not just in India, but across the world. So if you do want to meet us, stay in touch, follow us on LinkedIn and some of the other platforms. And if you are interested to speak of these events, of course, please let us know. The talks will be made available on YouTube later. So anyway, without further ado, excited for you to listen to the following podcast. Daniel, hi. Your experience and especially openness to new technologies is something that we've been willing to sort of share your perspective with the rest of the industry. And I think there's so much usefulness for others across the industry to hear other people's perspective on how best to adapt to new technologies, to new skills that are coming up. And just to dive straight into it, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how did you end up working at Parexel, and also maybe a little bit about your responsibilities at Parexel?
Thanks, Thomas. It's been an interesting journey. I've been over 10 years within the CRO space at this point in time. My current role is Director of Stats Programming here at Parexel. But leading up to this point, I've had the opportunity to take on a variety of roles within the stats programming space. In my earlier career, like many stats programmers out there, started in a very operational focused role, supporting with client deliverables across the plethora of tasks that we do, from your submission related activities to analysis and all the ad hoc nitty-gritty pieces in between. And over the years, I eventually transitioned into more leadership-based roles, management as well, because I do have a kind of a passion or a double-edged sword between tech and process and people at the end of the day, because I think those two really need to marry each other and be, a perfect blend and harmony, for a successful ecosystem in an organization. After moving through leadership roles, I started to segue a bit away from the operational side to take on more innovation and strategic roles within some previous CROs and today at Parexel as well. So in my current role, I'm quite vested in looking into new technologies and industry trends, really, to see how we can kind of jump on the bandwagon and see how rapid advances in tech can be served as a catalyst for our own procedural improvements. Because as you know, in this industry, it's all about getting things done as quick as possible with the highest level of quality. At the end of the day, just to get treatments out there sooner to patients rather than later. So in my current role, it's all about looking into systems and technologies that we can integrate into our processes. We're looking at really cool things in the AI space as well, which is quite a buzz at the moment in the industry, but also the opportunity to connect with our operational teams and look at more incremental, process improvements, training, development. So a bit of a blend of many things, but really enjoying it at this stage.
But what's some of the key attributes that you need to have in shift in mindset when you go from an individual contributor as a programmer that's very, let's say, very study specific, to someone that thinks at a macro level, at an organizational level, at a structural level? How's that mindset? How should people think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the key aspects I've always tried to focus on is identifying and harnessing transferable skills, because I'm a big believer in that, because that really widens the net of a person's capabilities and career advancement opportunities as well. You're very right. When you individual contributor in stats programming, it's very specialized, very specific type of skill sets you build up. Obviously, having a bit of an analytical background and a love for problem solving are big pluses in that space. And then you naturally build out skills from there. You start to learn programming languages, because I didn't have a SAS background at all. I was more in the computer science space, software engineering and development, and then coming into this industry, learning about SAS. Had to figure out what is SAS in the first place. So, there's a lot of things that you learn along the way. But I think identifying those key transferable skills, like how to communicate effectively, both up and down, is extremely important, because communication is one of the cornerstones in either conveying a need, establishing priorities, understanding what your customer wants, what your internal individuals need as well. So really working on communication skills is probably one of the cornerstones of transferable skills. And then I'll say from there, being open to learning about what the other functions in your industry are doing and what they're up to at the end of the day. Because I don't think as a stats programmer, we need to just fully focus on what we do day to day. Obviously, that's our bread and butter and what our task before us. But I think collaborating and breaking down the silos between functions and reaching out to other stakeholders, maybe reach out to a medical writer once in a while, maybe find out from data management what they're doing as well, and start building that kind of end-to-end working knowledge and concept of how does every kind of gear in this big biopharmaceutical machine work together at the end of the day. So yeah, I'd say it's a blend of transferable skills and cross-functional awareness is quite important.
I found that so fascinating because, we're dealing with a process that is fairly well standardized to the extent that it is possible across the world. This is how humans basically try to make themselves better. It's and you can go from such low level tasks like programming, domain X in SDTM, to really understanding how does this fit within the 10, 15 year timeline, all the way from, preclinical to post marketing. And I've always found that really inspiring, and really hard also. I can imagine if you've got deadlines, inquiries from FDA or sponsors. So I'm interested, you've been around for a while, and what's your take on the evolution of generally clinical programming in this industry? Are there distinct phases? Obviously, standards are relatively new, and where do you see it going?
In my opinion, I think we're entering kind of like a golden era in clinical programming, partly due to the fact of external technology advancements. I know I touched on AI briefly earlier, but really just the rapid ingestion and consumption of data, over the last couple of years compared to maybe 20, 30, 40 plus years ago. It's night and day at this point in time. Really, I think programming in general is a construct that really made sense, as things were very discrete and static in nature. But we're really moving more to a seamless end-to-end flow of clinical data within our industry. And I think we should all really gear ourselves and shift the mindset from being a clinical programmer or statistician to thinking more in the sense of being a data scientist or, a data steward, someone who can really be agile enough to interpret and work with data at almost any point in time. That's definitely something we're seeing more and more with our strategic initiatives, also being pushed by certain mandates. If we look at ICH requirements, for holistic data review, and being able to do that on an ongoing basis. Our centralized monitoring plays into that as well. So there's clearly an appetite and desire in the industry to have reliable data at any point in time, and to be able to make decisions or even risk-based interpretations on the ongoing performance of the studies. So yeah, so as a clinical programmer, that might sound like quite daunting. It's quite a lot because we're quite familiar to in terms of deliverables and milestones, very static steps along the way. But I really see that kind of construct or that concept melting away or almost fusing into almost an ongoing analysis of clinical trial data.
If we talk about specifics, obviously the world is enthralled by AI, even though obviously the discipline has existed for decades, but clearly LLMs have exceeded even the creators' expectations in their general applicability. Where do you see the biggest, when you define, I guess what I'm asking, when you refer to the golden age of clinical programming, and I may quote you on this, by the way, because I think that's a really good one, if that's okay.
Of course.
Is that because of LLMs specifically? Is that because of the rise of open source, or generally a culture that's emerging within statistical programming?
Yeah, and I wish I could say it's only one of those, but I think you hit the nail on the head with quite a few of them. I think it's a perfect storm of several factors. Obviously, ChatGPT, I think, obviously popularized the whole GPT premise of prompt-based, AI and, receiving context from there. That popularity just spiked and brought interest amongst people that maybe never really knew that technology existed or thought of AI as maybe this cool sci-fi concept from the movies or anything like that. So on the tech side, that building that popularity and trend in the industry, cross industry, really has really accelerated it. But yeah, I think definitely additional technologies outside of that has started to come to the forefront. If we go back to our clinical setting, the use of wearable devices and devices that stream real-time data and insights on human condition is becoming more and more prominent. And naturally, this is still something that's quite socio-economical divided. It's not a globally penetrated technology yet. But I believe with time, that's where we're going to shift towards. I think I saw an article recently that stated that the data source flip is actively happening, where EDC was always your main big data source, but we're finding that with time EDC is kind of diminishing, in favor of wearable devices, sensors, patient-driven data at the end of the day, because we want to be closer to the patient when we're analyzing different conditions and drugs and really catering to the patient's experience at the end of the day. So that's a whole other plethora of technologies that's occurring. And I think, yes, also, like you mentioned, lastly, the cultural shift. It is a new generation of programmers coming to the forefront. Not going to expose anyone's age here at all, but I do think there is a shift in how people approach their professional careers, how they prepare themselves academically. I remember, when I was started to approach the career, there was still a heavy emphasis on formal university degrees and, kind of like a traditional stepwise approach, where I'm starting to see, very good candidates I've seen in recent interviews that maybe don't have that extremely formal background of education, but took alternative routes of teaching themselves skills and technologies and building a portfolio for themselves to show that they actually have hands-on practical skills to show rather than the theoretical, degree and everything like that. So I think we can go on a whole other tangent in that discussion, but yeah, I think it is a perfect storm of a lot of mini catalysts that are starting to come together and is signaling this new age moving forward in our industry.
It's sort of a two-pronged question. If you have, let's say, the new age developer, a junior developer, programmer coming in that's, let's say, more comfortable with open source technologies or sort of new technologies in general, and you've got the veteran programmer that's been around for 2-3 decades or a decade, at least someone with some experience. How should both of those decide on what are the skill sets or how to transition into new skill sets? Obviously, R is a lot of people talk about R, but how useful is it really to learn R? Because there's relatively few organizations that have formally adopted R in their studies. How do you transition into those new technologies, and what are the things to think about if you're junior, mid-level, senior?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think it's a key decision point for programmers. Either already midway through their careers or freshly coming into it. I still see R, SAS, Python also coming into the play as just different sets of languages to kind of produce similar type of tasks. I would always start at the core foundations or concepts of what programming and analysis is all about. So firstly, starting by having a keen understanding of algorithms, data structures, even statistical models, if you're in the statistical programming space specifically. Getting a sound understanding of that will naturally give you the edge because you've got that theoretical and an analytical concept of how and why you are manipulating data in a certain way or analyzing certain aspects of data. And then the tools that come into play is the language of how you are going to actually produce those specific algorithms. And I feel being multilingual, if we take it away from programming, so you can just speak many languages, maybe French, Portuguese, English, etc. Naturally, that could give you an edge, if you are traveling around the world or you are engaging with customers, from different regions. How cool is it if you can speak their native language? So it does give you that edge, if we take it back to programming, being flexible enough to have a repertoire of tools available in your skill set. So being able to do R, SAS, because, I won't start a big debate argument over which language is better than the other. You've got your big proponents on either side. But I really believe it's down to the foundations of data programming and analytical problem solving, and then it's just a case of learning the different syntax and nuances of the different languages at the end of the day. For those that are veteran SAS users, like most of the people in the industry, because it has been one of the big proponents within our skill sets, is maybe not to be too scared or afraid of embracing some open source technologies. A person might find that you will enjoy it. It might even teach you a concept that maybe is a bit obscured in the language that you are used to, but is presented in a way that's a bit easier to digest, in your mind as well, of how to approach certain problems. And I think our industry is, again, going back to the whole golden age of programming, our industry is even like rapidly adopting and being open to open source technologies. You've got the whole R consortium. There are specific packages being developed for clinical programming use cases. And I'm personally excited to see Python a lot more in the mix, coming from my computer science background, something that is inherently more object-oriented programming, and seeing how that flows into a more sequential data-driven programming environment is really cool to see. So yeah, I would say, just embrace learning new skills at the end of the day, because it can only give you the edge. I can't see it disadvantaging anyone at the end of the day.
Do you think your formal background in computer science has shaped you in a different way than perhaps some other programmers that may have more statistical background?
It might have in certain degrees, maybe in terms of my entry point into, tackling, the education side of it early on in my career, and maybe grasping some programming concepts a bit earlier. But I don't think an individual that doesn't have a computer science background won't flourish in this industry. That's the beauty of it. There's fantastic veterans out there that mentor people every day that I see. I'm quite keen myself to help, more junior people with it as well. It really comes down to the person's personality, their hunger and their will to learn at the end of the day. Because if you really push yourself and you give yourself the time and the patience to learn the basics and the foundations and upskill yourself and be open for new challenges, I think anyone can thrive in this industry, which is one of the fun things of it at the end of the day. And really challenging yourself, as our title, displays, navigating challenges, I feel is such an important thing in everyone's career. I can't count how many times I took on an opportunity or was lucky enough to be considered for an opportunity that felt extremely daunting, made me feel very uncomfortable, all the knots in your stomach before the time, everything like that. But those reap the biggest rewards at the end of the day. And that's how you grow. If you're a bit outside of your comfort zone, your comfort zone grows a bit with you over time. So yeah, I definitely, would encourage anyone with any background to really relish the challenge.
What's your comfort zone, and when and where do you go out of it and expand it?
So I feel that if you are at a point where you're starting to do procedures or macros or anything like that, almost second nature without much thought, I think it's time maybe to try something new and challenge yourself again. I think it's very quick to get into that state after the 10th or 20th study that you've done, maybe add-in programming on. It starts to get, almost like second nature. And that level of comfort can be nice. Some people really like feeling comfortable and going into work every day knowing, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do. It's going to be a piece of cake. But definitely I would encourage, blocking out some time in your calendar, maybe every week or every 2 weeks, to give yourself dedicated creativity time or development time. I'm a big fan of putting physical blocks in my calendar to spend some time researching new technologies, or maybe catching up on recordings of webinars, from different conferences. Because I feel personally, if I don't have that in my calendar, something's going to take over and I'm not going to do it. That's how it is. Emails come up, meetings come up, ad hoc issues, you name it. But we owe it to ourselves to give ourselves that time to grow and learn new things so that it can remain fun, remain challenging. So I first set that dedicated time. So you have a set amount of time every month, and then do some research, have a look around at industries, recent white papers, even poke around other companies, within your industry, see what they're up to, what are the type of developments they're pushing towards, and, see what type of technologies are being utilized. R is, being spoken about quite a lot. Maybe it's for a reason. Maybe it's time to jump on the bandwagon and have a look as well. And I say at the heart of everything, you should challenge a new skill set that you are going to end up enjoying and, can benefit you at the end of the day. Because you don't want to waste your time and your life doing something you absolutely hate or anything like that. So, yeah, if a person enjoys it, it just makes the learning experience so much more effective at the end of the day.
And if I may, I would certainly add also listening to this podcast, perhaps.
Absolutely, yeah. First source.
And I think that's just general. That life advice is excellent, because, in general, when you start work, and especially once family duties come into play, it's so hard to just but you have to make that time. If you don't schedule it, if you don't prioritize it, put that block in your calendar. And even if it's just 2 hours a week, if you sum it up over a year, 2 hours, firstly, 2 hours a week is nothing. Over 50 weeks, that's 100 weeks in 1 year. In 100 hours over a year, you can really master a new skill. Obviously not to an expert level, but enough that to be able to perhaps consider a different path, or leverage in such a way that you could perhaps make it your full-time job. And I don't know who said this quote, but it's something that is so true. Maybe Bill Gates, I don't know. But it's that people most of the time overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 5. And life is very long. I think someone made this comment that if you look at, it's maybe not the best example, but if you look at Donald Trump, his pinnacle of his career was in his 70s. So the efforts, and not to say that one should look at him, whatever one thinks of his politics, life is a very, very long journey. And if you really enjoy what you're doing, and we meet so many people especially in statistical programming, that are so passionate about doing the right things for these analyses, that it's such an important work that really pushing yourself to being the best version ultimately does such great things for people, patients all over the world. And so to follow up on that, how should someone, if let's say you've taken a considerable amount of time to upskill yourself, how do you think someone should leverage that to get a career change, maybe within company, but also perhaps changing companies? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, obviously you put in all the effort to upskill, that you want the reward out of it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
One thing I learned a couple of years ago, I can't remember who it was, but you have to treat your resume or your career almost as a brand. How do you market yourself at the end of the day? Because you want to be attractive, to any company, both internally to your own company or externally as well. And, taking some time to work on that branding experience doesn't hurt. Maybe touching up your CV once in a while wouldn't hurt, because I know a lot of people are at fault of doing the CV once every 5 to 10 years, when they're looking, and then it becomes quite outdated. Leveraging networking platforms such as LinkedIn, a very big one. There's communities out there, blog posts, everything like that you can work through as well. And leveraging conferences, both virtual, in person, to network, get out of the comfort zone again, and showcase your abilities is a very good opportunity within the career. But it doesn't always have to be just those external facing opportunities. Within your own industry, or your own company, that is, I would say definitely being open and transparent with your direct line manager or supervisor, and really sharing your ambition with them, because they should typically be a kind of primary pathway or door to help you navigate opportunities that you may not be immediately privy to, but are out there. And, it's just waiting for people to grab onto. So that's one route that I've taken as well in my past, speaking to my line manager, telling them that I'm really interested in becoming this. And it doesn't have to be right now, but work with me. I'm willing to put in the extra time and the effort to learn the skills to get to that point where I can become that person or that role. You'll see most managers will really take that on board and be happy, with the outlook, because you're kind of helping them do their job as well by mapping out your career path as well. So that's fantastic. The other angle as well is, never be afraid to share an idea, even if it sounds wacky or out of context or anything like that. But if you have a very good idea in terms of innovation or how you can leverage a new programming language within your organization, be open and share it, maybe with your line manager, maybe within your regional team meeting. A lot of companies have like knowledge sharing sessions, and approach it with bravery. Go with your solution. Don't worry if it gets shot down. It might get shot down, it might not, but go there with the premise that I'm either, at the best case scenario, going to unlock an opportunity here that people are going to, want to take onto this idea, or it's not going to work out, but I've just gained a bit of experience on how to approach a team with this. I've learned from it. Let me move on to the next opportunity, because failure is not failure. It's just an opportunity to improve at the end of the day. There's no such thing as failure in our industry. A stats programmer is one of the most resilient jobs and type of person out there that I know. So yeah, I would say just be open to sharing your knowledge and taking a leap once in a while, because you never know. You might just land on a nice cloud up there. Who knows?
And I think that's so true. Also, if you think about it, if you take the speed of decision making in terms of going to this event, talking to that people, talking to your boss, sharing your advice, if you make 10 of those decisions or 10 of those actions, and let's say only one of those works out, versus making 100 of those and only 10 of those work out, you still got the same ratio, but you got 10 times more good decisions that go your way. And as long as the failures are not life-threatening, then you should be fine. Because I think you're right. But most of the time, it's these decisions that at worst will be embarrassing or slightly uncomfortable. As a final note, what do you see as the biggest trends in this golden age of programming? We sort of slightly touched on it, but I do want to come back to that and get your view. What do you think is going to change the industry the most? And perhaps what are you working on right now?
Yeah, I think we've got a lot to look forward to in our industry. I think the next 10 years are going to be radically different to the last 10 years, if I could put it that way. Obviously, AI-based technologies, real-time data delivery are going to be key cornerstones to our programming landscape. Within our organization and my teams, we working on a lot of tailored solutions that leverage the likes of machine learning, large language models, and natural language processing to really optimize our use cases and our processes. When we speak about this, a lot of people have that funny doom and gloom aspect. Is this going to take a programmer's role away or anything like that? But not at all. We see the value in the human in the loop whenever an AI component is in place, and just looking at ways of supercharging our staff's repertoire or tools that they can use to ultimately transform and analyze data at lightning speed compared to how we used to do it 10 years ago, while maintaining exceptional quality. So those tech spaces, I think, are going to take off. I saw another report that indicated across the survey of over 50 organizations, over 80% of those organizations have at least one or more AI-based initiatives that are in planning phase. So really, I think the train has left the station. It's really, time to get on board and keep up with the industry trend. Otherwise, being at risk of, falling a bit behind the curve there. Traditional paradigms and concepts in our industry are going to change as well, like the validation space. Validating programming code and deliverables, traditionally was very human driven, completing checklists and, using human intellect and expertise, to review. I see that being bolstered with additional technology and solutions. We've got the like of co-pilots being, embedded in programming editors to help formulate good programming practices on the fly, integrated code review tools, reviewing logs and checking for code for things like that as well, where traditionally that would take a very long time if a person had to go through it manually. And also, executing our validation as we produce our data and our outputs. Moving away from that whole static hand-off approach, from one person to the next, and having the whole validation brought in a lot tighter to the development space, I believe is going to be a key factor as well. And then lastly, with all these nice technologies and, philosophy changes, the actual role of the stat programmer, I think, is really going to be redefined over the next couple of years as well. Like I mentioned earlier, the whole concept of being a data scientist or someone with a end-to-end knowledge of the flow of data and what that final interpretation means in the context of the clinical trial is really going to set apart the best of the best within our industry. So yeah, I think that's something exciting to look forward to and really unlocks new opportunities and skills for all of us to learn in the industry, which keeps it fun and interesting at the end of the day.
Of course, on the validation piece, we at Verisian hope to play an important part in there as well. Is there any final thoughts or remarks you wish to share with our listeners before we finish this episode?
No, just thanks again, Thomas, for having me. I think this was a really a fun chat. Really nice to share thoughts on what's happening in the industry, and to all the stats programmers out there and my fellow colleagues. Just definitely keep being brave. I think we are, of the bravest out there with the extreme deadlines and hectic times we all go through in this industry. But really just be brave, be open to new challenges and embrace new technologies. Especially those who have been very proficient over many years, in a certain space. It can feel a bit daunting after so many years to take on something new, but I can promise you'll be surprised, at what change can do and, trying something new can do, for your benefit and for your sanity in this crazy world. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Daniel, thank you so much for joining us in this episode and sharing your insights with us. If anyone wants to reach out to you, can they send you a message on LinkedIn or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to connect with anyone if there's any questions or want to chat about any of these topics. I love it. I love the tech side. I love the human person development side as well. So yeah, happy to chat to anyone out there.
Awesome. Daniel, again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day. I know the weather's amazing in Bloemfontein compared to London. It feels like amazing. It's like 28 degrees with sunshine. So hopefully we can meet there one day. But until then, thank you. And we'll speak soon.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Keep well. Bye-bye.